Well, I'm back. So, what we're going to do right now is to go through a sample student essay based on the prompt that I had you read the other night from the Spectator. So, what I want to do is to show you the old prompt and the format of the new prompt, which is really not very different. Okay. Things are changing. I mean, they're changing like every hour, and I've been watching all the College Board videos and getting their emails, and I'm going to try to keep you up to speed as much as possible. All right, so the prompt that you read um, from the retired paper. In the following passage from the Spectator, March the 4th, 1712, the English diarist Joseph Addison creates a character who keeps a diary. Read the passage carefully. Then, in a well-organized essay, analyze how the language of the passage characterizes the diarist and his society, and how the characterization serves Addison's satiric purpose. Okay, so like all of these prompts, you're going to get some information. Now, I am not sure how much information you're going to get this year because everything's changed. Usually they will give you some sort of context as they have here. Sometimes they give you a really big hint, like satiric purpose, like, oh my gosh, this is satire. So make sure that you read the prompt carefully and that you take all the information that they give you. Now, here's a little difference that is going to happen this year. In the past, some of the prompts, not all of them, but some of them would like give you like a little nudge in the right way to attack this. It would say, the prompt said, you may wish to consider such elements as selection of detail, repetition, and tone. And you'd go, oh, okay, got that. And those were the things that you would deal with. Now, apparently, what's going to happen this year is they're not going to give you those specifics. The phrasing will be something like show how the language of the passage characterizes the diarist, and how the literary term serves Addison's satiric purpose through the author's choice of literary elements and techniques. So they're not going to give you specifics, but that's okay, because this year, of all years, it's so crazy. You guys it's like open book. If you've not looked at my little handout, I think it's under modules. It's got a cartoon, a Kafka cartoon, because we're all living in a Kafka world. I would print out that little booklet because it has like tons of good terms here, and that will jog your memory. We'll talk in a minute after we've gone through the essay about more specifics in terms of taking an open book test. But right now, what I want to do is to look at this kid's essay and see what's really good about it. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Whenever I go through these essays, like, I never know, did a girl write it? Did a boy write it? And I go, this kid. So I'm going to pretend that a girl wrote this one, and we're going to call her, Fanny. Okay. And then that way I don't have to keep saying he or she and all that stuff. So apparently, Fanny, she must have taken AP World History, because when she gets into this essay, she immediately gives a pretty specific historical connection. Now, because this essay had the date of 1712, she was able to figure that out. Now, if you happen to know the context, awesome, but if you don't worry about it. The Restoration, just to remind you, was that period in British history. If you remember, Cromwell took over for a while, and then Charles II was restored to the throne. The term restoration, it's one of those terms that has lots of different dates that are like, if somebody asks you the dates of the Middle Ages, you can look in 5 different textbooks and get 5 different answers. The Restoration is dated when Charles came back to the throne, which was, I think, 1666, something like that, through the very beginning of the 1700s. So that's the time period we're talking about. Now, remember when we did the Romantics, we talked about how, like, the pendulum theory of history, like how the Romantics were into like feelings and emotions. And, the idea of the pendulum, the pendulum was swinging back and forth before the Romantic era. That's the 18th century. That's the time period of this piece. And things were, the emphasis was more on logic and not so much on emotion and feeling. And that's what Fanny is identifying here, that the author of this piece, Joseph Addison, is sort of making fun of. So what you're going to do in these essays, always, you're going to look at the piece and you're going to say, okay, what is going on here and how can I relate it to something bigger? Now, if you read the piece, it is some guy's diary, okay? And last year when we went over this, somebody mentioned, and I think it's a great observation, this guy would have been on Snapchat, okay? And he would have been the guy who would like take a picture of his hamburger and like send it to all of his friends and say, oh, this is what I had for lunch, okay? And this is the guy who would like be doing his dishes, and he would like take a picture and he would say, oh, I cleaned the crock pot, and take a picture of it. Because the kind of the point of this, in many ways, I think it's kind of modern. It's the idea that, there's this sort of emphasis on this personal detail where, he's talking about this buckle on his shoe broke and we're all supposed to care. And there's also that sort of flat line kind of, he's talking about it rained and he didn't, he got wet. And then he's talking about an assassination, okay, the Grand Vizier. And you don't really hear in the tone of the piece much of, a difference in the emphasis of the mundane and the terrifying. And that's going to be kind of the point. So let's see what Fanny did in her essay here. As I said, she starts off with this sort of universal view here based on her historical knowledge, which if you can do that, good. If not, don't worry about it. The Restoration was marked by the birth of several renowned, brilliant, and bitter satirists. Okay, we know this is satire because the College Board told us. These authors saw many things in society: deism, scientific revolution, and a penchant for routine. Okay, so it's routine and logic that is privileged versus later on in the Romantic era, emotion and feeling and, looking at rainbows. All right, now here's where she gets to the heart of her thesis. The universal subject for satire, however, was the author's view that society had fallen into an emotional, personal, and spiritual rot that was sadly hidden by the high standard of living at the time. The elements of repetition, tone, and selection of detail in Joseph Addison's The Spectator characterized the diarist as unthinking, superficial, and unworldly. Oh, and she uses a semicolon. Good job, Fanny. These elements serve Addison's satiric purpose in that the exaggeration of detail in the passage emphasizes and pokes fun at the emotional and spiritual void in society. Okay, so what she's doing is she's going to use the guy who wrote this diary, who writes, with this very sort of unemotional and sort of clueless view of the world, and she's going to extrapolate from this guy that he what Addison is doing is poking fun at the world, the microcosm and the macrocosm. All right, now you're going to have to deal with some literary techniques, and Fanny picks up and she said, "This is kind of an interesting way to start the body paragraph. Just a flat out statement. Repetition is very important in this passage." Well, why? All the way through these essays, if you make an allegation, you got to tell me so what, okay? Who cares? Well, it characterizes the diarist as perfunctory and almost animalistic in his behavior. The diarist's routine consists of personal grooming, light exercise, repose, dining, and an occasional sit-in at a coffee house. Back then, you think Starbucks started it all? No. It's during this time period that the British discovered coffee. They actually were more into coffee for a while than they were tea, and they would have these coffee houses. And all the intellectuals would go and hang out, and they would have coffee and talk about stuff. So that reference here is again another reference to the times here. All right, so here there's some quotes in this essay. Remember, what you want to do is to give your evidence. We've made an allegation that his routine is like pretty boring. So here's some evidence. The reader learns the diarist sat down to dinner. Later, he complains about his food. sprouts wanting. Okay, so we've got some specifics. This routine hardly varies in the course of the week, and one notices diarist does not pursue any academic goals, have any intellectual or spiritual pleasures. Rather, his daily tete-a-tete with Mr. Nisby seems to be his only source of information from the outside world. He's only paying attention to one news source. That's kind of interesting. He does not bother to assert his own opinions. Mr. Nisby's are taken as his own. Here's some more evidence. He notes such varied incidents as consuming a dish of twist, and there's a little footnote there. That's some kind of a drink, with the information Grand Vizier strangled, with the same cadence, tone, and emphasis. So you're supposed to pick up on that. He's in his diary, what he eats and what he drinks, and when his belt buckle breaks, has the same emphasis as, clearly significant world events, and he doesn't seem to, make any distinction. Clearly, something is amiss in the diarist's perception of the world. So we get this evidence, and then we get a so what. Well, why is Addison giving us these details? Because he wants to show us that something's wrong with this perception of the world. With the diarist, this guy the guy who's writing this, his perception is wrong. And therefore, there's something wrong in the larger world. Addison uses this incongruity to his satiric purpose. Again, a nice explanation. In a time when unrest was growing both in the English colonies and France, the diarist seems wholly unaware of any trouble, save his occasional indigestion. And this is a really brilliant observation that Fanny makes. Much as the title of Addison's work indicates, the diarist is a deplorable spectator during one of those interesting times in history. He seems only to live to satisfy his basic primal instincts and is thus superficial. So this guy is just, Snapchatting away while the whole world is, blowing up around him. Now we get some more evidence. You've got to go back to those resources of language. How does Addison do this? Another resource of language that characterizes the diarist as a robot-like, foppish aristocrat is the emotionless tone. There's your literary word. Just as the scientific revolution is depicted as a time where fact, not feeling, was sainted, so the diarist is unconcerned with his own intellect and emotions. Addison is satirizing through the narrative didactic tones of the passage the diarist's lack of involvement in the intellectual revolution that surrounded him. Okay, so what the tone is, flat. And why does Addison do this? Because it shows us that this character, the guy writing the diary, is disconnected. Addison was poking fun at the many people who idly watched as brilliant minds made progress in science, literature, and philosophy. And then here's some more analysis. The passage does not contain any description of the diarist's thoughts or emotions, which makes it seem like a scientific journal solely concerned with fact. He records that he brought a new head to my cane and a tongue to my buckle, with the same emphasis as I dreamt I drank a small beer with the Grand Vizier. Okay, so again, he goes to the shoemaker and fixes the buckles on his shoes. And then he mentions that he has a dream about the Grand Vizier who's just been assassinated. But everything is recorded with the same sort of flat emphasis. Fanny here in her essay says the tone characterizes the diarist as perfunctory and superficial, as the tone of the passage, kind of a grammar error, the tone of the passage is purely objective. You're going to have some mistakes in your papers. Don't worry about that. This paper got a 9, and there are a couple of mistakes in it, but it's okay. Addison's selection of detail also characterizes the diarist. An 18th century society is unthinking and unworldly. So what Addison, the author, is doing by giving all these details, in the diarist's journal here, is making a comment about the larger world. The entries for the week describe mundane activities that most people would not bother to write down, okay, unless you're taking a picture of your fried eggs for Snapchat. Okay, sorry. The fact is, however, that the diarist has nothing else to write about. His life is routine. Unfortunately, his routine is very self-centered and egocentric. All of the entries relate to the diarist's action during the week solely concerning himself, whereas most journals contain profound thoughts on anxiety or personal observations and anecdotes, the diarist's log is neither. Addison juxtaposes the death of the Grand Vizier with the consumption of a beverage, okay, as we saw above. Someone who's so wholly uninterested in the fate of others and the news in the world can only be described as self-serving and mechanical. As the diarist can be seen as the embodiment of the Restoration system of values and mindset, the 1700s, in Addison's viewpoint, were an equally despicable time period as the diarist himself. Boy, Fanny is really making some judgments here. And you can make judgments. Don't just, make sure that the text supports your judgment. The characterization of the diarist and the resources of language in the passage also serve Addison's satiric purpose in that they exaggerate minute and mundane detail and they emphasize the emotional and intellectual void, the society of the Restoration. Okay, so here's where Fanny's talking about the resources of language, selection of details. They exaggerate all these mundane details for the purpose of pointing up what Addison is pointing to, which is this intellectual, emotionless kind of void. Addison wanted to criticize those who failed to act while others made social progress. He felt these people were a disgrace to society and the people of the Restoration valued should be the wrong ideals. Like I said, might be some mistakes in here, don't worry. He felt that the scientific revolution wrongly pushed aside natural human values and ideals in favor of fact and logical reasoning. So I'm hoping that this very detailed sort of analysis of this essay will show you A, how to do it, and B, that you can do it. Okay, you're just going to work your way through whatever they throw at you. Who knows? I mean, I always think that this particular one is really interesting. It's a diary, and I mean, it's kind of funny when you read about this guy and how he goes through his life and seems really clueless. He seems really unaware. Okay, and what Addison is doing is pointing out, again, the microcosm and the macrocosm, the idea that something's going on in society and this guy doesn't have a clue. Therefore, there's something wrong with society. Okay. All right. Just to one more time reiterate, this is the language from the College Board. And I've given this to you a couple times already. And this is what we've talked about in other words all year. They want you to respond to the prompt with a claim that presents an interpretation. All right. Well, what's going on here is this diary can be taken as an indictment of the emotionless, superficial world of, the 18th century. So you're going to have a thesis. You're going to select and use evidence to develop and support your interpretation. We've talked about that. Drop in quotes. Explain the relationship between the evidence and your interpretation. That's the so what. Okay. Who cares? And then use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your arguments. Sentence sophistication, you guys will be fine on that, okay? I'm going to continue to give you hints from the College Board as we go through this. Remember, this is open book. If you've not already printed out the handout packet that I put together for you, the one that has the Metamorphosis cartoon, I would do that. It's got lots of cool stuff on that. Some more things to remember. This is information from the College Board that literally came out last night, okay? Or part of this came out last night. All right, remember, this is an open book test, and the College Board, these are quotes from the College Board, okay? More materials aren't always better. They tell you should not copy a response from notes or resources, okay? Your class notes are better than internet searches. I mean, you're going to have your computer there, but I have no idea what kind of a question they're going to give you. Nobody does. It's a grand mystery, like black holes, same kind of a thing. What's the question going to be, and what are black holes? Same thing. I would have that little packet that I gave you. Like if you forget, oh my gosh, what does Gothic mean? Or, oh my gosh, I can't remember what syntax is. It's all in that packet, all right? This part just came out last night. Okay, the exam questions are viewed by students in a web browser like Chrome. What you're going to do, you're going to either type or write your response outside that browser, and then you're going to choose from options to submit the responses. You can either copy and paste the typed response, you can attach a typed response, or you can handwrite this and attach a photo of that. I'm thinking you're probably all going to opt for the typing business here. We'll continue to give you more information. You're going to be getting emails from College Board about how to do this. There is a demo test that I'm not sure what day you're seeing this, but you'll have either taken the demo test or you will be taking the demo test. And then we're going to work together on a checklist for what you need to do for the day of the test. So we're going to keep working on this together. I hope you enjoyed going through Fanny's essay. She did a really good job on this essay. She got a 9. And if you want, down at the bottom here, I kind of analyzed her essay again and I put it in a chart, but you've probably had enough of talking to me right now, so I'm not going to go through the chart. You can do that on your own if you would like, if you think it would help you. You guys are going to be fine. You're all good writers. You know what you're doing. It is a crazy time. Apparently, the whole world is going to be taking this, one passage test at the same time. And I was thinking a girl who grew up in the 60s. So I don't know what it was. Sometime in the 70s, there was this thing where like we were all, like the whole world, like we were all supposed to hold hands and like make a circle around the world. I mean, I guess you have to like skip the oceans, but like, we were supposed to like make a chain around the world and hold hands. So let's just kind of think about it. Everybody's going to be taking the same question. We're going to kind of like metaphorically all be holding hands around the world, like skipping the oceans. So it's going to be crazy, you guys. It's going to be, oh my gosh, you're going to have so many stories to tell your children. Y'all are going to have way more stories than I ever had to torture you with. All right. Hope this helped. I'll let you go back to sleep. I miss you, but you're going to be awesome on the test. So now I got to figure out how to stop this thing. And there's always that sort of awkward look at the end of these where I'm, searching for the stop button. And I'll talk to you soon.